Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Blank Space with Grace. I created Blank Space to help turn the city strangers into the city stories. Think about all the strangers that make up your day-to-day life, whether it be the person that you see every day at the bus stop, whether it be your barista, whether it be the girl that you see surfing in the ocean every day. The point is that every stranger that makes up your day-to-day life has a personality, hopes, dreams, a past life, family members, friends, people that they care about, and they all have stories to tell. My goal is to help us to get to know those strangers a little bit better by having them tell their stories. There's so many out there, and I want to hear as many as I can. And I hope that you do too. I hope that this will be funny. I hope that this will be sad. I hope that it'll be thought provoking. I'm hoping that it'll be unexpected and interesting. I hope that I have no idea what's going to come up in the conversation until it happens. But today I'm talking with Roma. Roma and I met because he is the barista at my local coffee shop, but there is so much more to Roma than just that. So enjoy his story.
Oh,
We're back!
long time no see.
Long time no see.
We actually messed up the first iteration of it, but
Yes, I did mess
So-
up the first iteration of it, but
We did.
now I think we look better. I think we sound better. I think that this is going to be like just better overall. But we're not having the same conversation. We're improving the conversation that we had
that's
last
the
time.
idea.
Yeah,
Amazing. Love it.
exactly.
Cool.
But first, because no one else had the first conversation, I need you to introduce yourself and say where you live in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I'm Roma. I live in Inner Richmond in San Francisco.
Perfect.
I moved from Ukraine and I've been here for almost 4 years now.
3 years. But you have only been in the Richmond for 2 years, is that right? Or when did you move there?
I've been in Richmond for about 3 years now and 8 months in Piedmont in East
Okay.
Bay,
East Bay.
around Auckland Hills, yeah.
And why did you start out in East Bay?
So we came together with my aunt, and she had a son in the Bay who spent quite some time in the Bay. So he sheltered us. There was a community house, and then as the lease has ended, the community house decided not to proceed with a new lease. So just got disparate, and me and my cousin, we went to SF. Yeah, funny enough, it was also my birthday, the day of my birthday.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, the day when we moved all the stuff and we fully transferred into the new place, it was my birthday.
oh my
It was
gosh.
fun.
Was it good? Was that like a happy day, or were you kind of mad that you had to move on your birthday? I feel like moving on your
Not
birthday
really.
kind of
I wasn't neither excited or upset. It was a good birthday. It was symbolic for me. It was turning 18. It was a good move, good gesture to move and enter the city and turning 18 at the same time, like entering a new era.
new era.
You call it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was your first impression of like East Bay versus the Inner Richmond?
The part of East Bay I lived in was very sociopathic and lifeless. The Piedmont Hills, there were not so many people and activities around, so the contrast was huge. So I cannot compare it directly to the East Bay because it's very different across different cities. But overall, the SF is much more vivid.
I was going to say that the Inner Richmond is often described as very quiet within the city. It's definitely not one of the most liveliest neighborhoods, but how would you describe the Inner Richmond?
The part of Inner Richmond where I live is very vivid and has a lot of life to it. Not Paris though, just restaurants and bars, but overall it's a residential area where there's a bunch of families and Asians in there that does not go in Paris, so it's not that type of life that you see, but rather people you just see people outside, and it's nicer than the Piedmont because you don't see people outside. You only see people when you go out on hikes, which is nicer because everyone's greeting you and everyone's more people are smiling to you, but you also see less people.
Right.
So it's just nice to see life outside. Makes you also want to go out and do stuff, opposed to not seeing anyone and not going out yourself.
Yeah, it's like once you see people out on the streets, then you think, oh, I should also be on
Yeah,
these
and you see
streets.
the good energy and you're attracted to the energy, and then you are the emitter at some point.
And when you moved to the Bay Area, when we were talking earlier, you were saying you had no expectations of San Francisco. You didn't really understand how San Francisco fell into like the map of the United States, or maybe geographically, like you understood the location, but not what the
Mhm.
city was like. Can you talk a little bit about your first impressions of San Francisco?
So I skipped the SF and I drove directly straight into to the bay, to the Piedmont.
Okay.
So I missed on the city, and whenever I would try and go and explore, I mean, it wasn't. The attempts weren't good because I would usually go at night around 8, past 8 p.m. where it's dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the first impressions were that the city is dead, no one's there. Especially the downtown, it's so different compared to other major cities where you go in downtown and it's so alive. It's so SF is kind of, or America rather, is kind of unique in this way because usually in Europe and other countries you can see the clear division of a downtown, let's say FIDI area and residential or restaurants. But here it's all combined together. There is an intersection of FIDI, some food places, and just people walking around in a downtown SF
Mm-hmm.
during the day. So it's quite unique. But at night it was dead, and this were the times where I would go
Mm-hmm.
to the city and I would see that I would see nothing other than homelessness.
Yeah.
And the first impressions were as didn't seem exciting to. I didn't want to come back.
That division of downtown, I think, was a big difference after 2020. I didn't live in San Francisco during 2020 or before 2020, but when COVID hit, I think that changed the livelihood of a lot of downtowns in the United States. So before, people were going into the office all the time, and so after work they would go to the bars around their office, and the downtown would be more lively. But now so many people are working from home. Obviously, that's changing a little bit now, but I can imagine in 2022, especially, there's like no one downtown because no one was going into the office. There's always like vacant office space, and so it'd be especially dead. But San Francisco in general is also, this is a much smaller city, so
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
just, it is just quieter. I think I had a friend visit from New York the other week, and he just said it's just crazy. There's just less people on the sidewalk. I mean, obviously he's coming from New York, so it's really different. But it
Eight
is
hundred
just,
thousand
yeah,
against 8 million.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Big jump. So your first impression was very quiet. What did you think of the people? Like, what were the, like, your interactions with people like when you first moved here?
I still didn't break the cultural barrier at the
Mm-hmm.
time, so I would not interact with them much. So everything seemed foreign, so I could not estimate, like evaluate how open the people were. Or, like I didn't have conversations with them. I didn't have conversation with them in Piedmont, but I think that's pretty general for suburban for people to be more welcoming and less worried, less involved in the city pace. They're generally more present, I would say, just in all suburbans outside of a city. So I was not making this direct correlation, but I did not interact with people as such either. So it was simply nice to see more life going on whenever I would go during the day, and there's much more events going on in the city as well. One of the few first one that I went was the Church of Eight Wheels, a really nice roller coaster inside of a church. So it was very nice, very unique. I kind of started getting on get, getting to know the culture, the how SF is, the Bay Area in general. I was not aware of it as of a city, hippie
Mm-hmm.
capital. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, can you tell me more about the Church of Eight Wheels? Because I've heard of it, and I feel, but I don't know a lot about it. What is the Church of Eight Wheels?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an empty church building with
Uh,
wooden floor. That it's not a roller coaster, but people go and ride rollers with the light music. and a DJ playing.
Rollerblades.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
And it's non-commercial, so essentially you walk in, you pay $20, and that's the idea behind it. But it's very cheap. It's one of the nicest experience you can have for $20 in a city. It's very fun. It's
Okay.
very unique too. It's an actual church building. So you walk in, you see the interior, the ceiling,
Mhm.
especially with the light music. It's such a nice combination. I didn't travel around the Europe a lot, so I assume there is a lot of that in Germany and London, where it's a rave culture and people do it all the time. But for me, it was a big, like, it was a nice introduction.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That's actually the best description I've had because I don't think I know many people who have actually been, but it's I like to rollerblade, but I'll go down the Molina Green or something where it's very flat, and people always say, "Oh, have you been to Church of Eight Wheels?" And I haven't been yet,
Oh,
so now I need to go. Can I go in my basic
yes,
rollerblades? Anyone can just bring rollerblades and skate.
exactly.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
They have one rentals.
Okay.
They're a rental. You pay the entrance. You buy the entrance, and then they have the rental shoes for
Okay.
you. You don't need to rent the shoes. They just have the spare ones
Okay.
that they're giving away. Not giving away, that letting you use them. So yeah, uh, and they have a nicer sessions with more experienced people around 10. So if you know
Mm.
how do you say it, roll,
Rollerblade.
yeah. So
Yeah.
if you know, if you have experience and you wanna, and it's not just the people go in circles, people actually dance. There is a similar event happening in Golden Gate Park where
Yes,
someone
I've
brings
seen
a
that.
speaker and yeah, people just dance
Yeah.
on rollers. So that's similar, but people go in circle and follow. There are more people, so it has to be a little bit more organized. But usually the more experienced, the nicer people come around 10-ish or past 10. So if you want to have a, well, it also gets more crowded, so you need some experience if you don't want to injure yourself. But a good time to train would be before 10 or like around 8, and after 10 is for more
At night?
experience. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
I've
I
gone
think
by during the day and I see like very few people, but you're saying at night is when
it's
Church of Eight
very
Wheels is there.
lively.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. Well, that is one activity that now I need to do. And as a what? How often do you go to that, or like what other activities are you doing in the Bay? Are you like are there new activities that you've explored, or old ones that you've
Mhm,
continued?
mhm. Yeah, the Church of Fate Wheels is just a random occasion whenever I bring it up in a conversation like that
Okay.
and someone gets really excited. I was like, yes, we gotta do it.
Yes.
It's very fun. Like, I like to introduce my friends to these small little funny things you can find in the city. So most of my interactions are either, I like to climb. So
Okay.
it's a nice, it's just a nice sport, nice activity to do to let your brain rest and also involve your body in some physical activity. And the people are very nice in the climbing community. So, like, to do that, I would usually bring my friends to climbing and teach them how to climb,
Mm-hmm.
how to boulder specifically.
Where are you doing that? Are you doing that at the climbing gym down here on the
Yeah,
Molina?
I do. I used to go to the Touchstone. They have several locations across the bay.
Okay.
But there is two in the city. One Dog Patch, one is Mission Cliffs, but it's a little too much of a transition commute for me from Rainier Richmond to Mission. It's
Mm-hmm.
like 45 minutes, so I switched. I was not aware of this one. Just got randomly introduced through my other friends who, funny enough, they moved to Mission and they couldn't go to this one, but they really liked it, so they transitioned to Mission and I did the opposite. I transitioned from Mission, although I was living in Richmond, I transitioned to this one.
Wow.
So I just randomly got introduced to that, and yeah, I go to one by the Crucifix. So the climbing is amazing, and then all the small things like the uh, music auditioning I mentioned to you,
Mm-hmm.
the room with 32 speakers that specifically rearrange albums to make this high volume sound, followed by AI generated light sound. Light sound is that how you call it? I think light sound. Yeah, that's how you call it.
Okay.
Yeah, and the light is dimmed and it's just the music and you that are present in the room. So
Okay.
all the small things, or like another one that I really enjoyed the last year, they do it annually. It's called SF Art Basel. It's not an traditional Art Basel, but it's essentially a bunch of hippies gathering at the BART station and introducing their art. Wherever
Okay.
they bring, you can take a random piece from a stranger, just like improvise, or you prepare an actual piece, and everyone dressed up funny,
Okay.
hippie like, funky
Yeah.
people, and they travel across bar station. They start off Embarcadero. I believe they go to Civic Center and finish at Balboa Park,
Okay.
and it's free. Essentially, what you pay is the bar fee for just the fee for using the bar, which is like 250,
Okay.
and it's the cheapest and the funniest thing I've done in the city. 250
Okay.
for like hour and a half, 2 hours of joy.
Yeah. Wait. So
Essentially,
when is this? Is it just
they haven't announced this year's yet,
okay?
but the last year was probably in January, maybe February,
Okay. It seems
winter
that
time.
you really like finding the niche things in San Francisco that make San Francisco weird. Like I feel like San Francisco's kind of a it's one of the best things about it is there's people always doing something funky like
Exactly.
that
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that you can
exactly.
like find them and like seek them out.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you
So,
usually learn about those things that are happening?
so common friends who also do the
Okay.
things, who are also getting introduced by their friends, and it just goes back and forth and
Okay.
circulates within the same group of people. And many faces that you see over there, you're gonna see them again. Like
Okay.
they're repetitive.
They're repetitive. Thinking about someone who maybe just moved to the city and hasn't necessarily found out about those things, but it sounds like if you kind of just start doing things that you enjoy, you'll find people who can then just word of mouth give you these things. And it sounds, did you make friends at the climbing gym, or were these friends that you met through your cousin? Like, how did you meet them?
Yeah, all over the place. People are so welcoming in the city, but wherever you go, I mean, obviously, if you yourself are open, then people are gonna be open. But let's put it aside, and overall, people are very welcoming and open. And essentially, wherever you go, you make friends.
Yeah.
And for people who move into the city, it's really hard to build a network. And that's mainly how I find my events. One of the things I could recommend, there is a website called Fun Cheap, or Cheap for
Fun for cheap.
Fun for Cheap, I
Fun
think.
for
Yeah,
cheap fun maybe.
cheap fun, something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
they post some free or cheap, nice, really nice events that you can attend in a city that are like related to the things we've discussed, like Church of Eight Wheels or this Art Basel. Or I like how I find this just randomly through getting introduced by someone. Or the last event, the last funky thing I went to was this the hole party at the Ocean Beach. Hole as a like hole.
Okay.
So essentially, a bunch of people just dig in the hole.
You told me about
Yeah,
this.
yeah. So
Yes.
that it was hilarious, and I just randomly found it on a Facebook. I don't spend much time on a Facebook, but every so often I go and look through notification wherever is going on, like the post my friends make, or sometimes they invite me to their birthday parties and they don't send a text and they just send an invitation. So every so often I have to check to don't miss someone's birthday, and that's
There you
when
go.
sometimes I go on this like mystical event page and just some random bullshit pops up. And
Yeah.
usually when you see a gem, you recognize it. So like that's the main.
There's some people that are just
Yeah,
like repeating at all of these things and
exactly.
word of mouth. That's so
They're
fun.
all random people because the community is really big, but like some topical events are usually faces are usually repetitive.
Hmm.
Like this mission fusion dance is one of the best things. I also think it's a very nice thing to do in a city. The fusion uh, as not as if not the merge of two genres of music, but rather the fusion of people,
Hmm.
like the connection. Essentially, what it is that you dance by remaining in a physical contact with your partner, and you just randomly pick a partner or you bring your own to the event. So the whole dance is some slow, not sure what the genre is, but slow, some sort of pop-ish music,
Okay.
I guess. And the whole idea of the dance, there is essentially no rules. The only rule is to remain in a contact and just physical contact and just match the rhythm. And you can do that with wherever part of your body. You can hold the knees together, you can hold the knee against someone's ass, or you can do the elbow, or just in whatever way, just remain in a contact. And people find some really nice, they improvise and they find some really nice ways to develop it, like by switching weights, like putting your weight on the other person's weight. And there's branches from that, like microfusion, the even slower version, where the movements you make are these micro movements where you like in a really close contact with your partner, and you just follow the body rhythm, like minor, the smallest hip motions. And just attend this and try it. It's very fun, and all these things make the culture in the city. Like that's what I like.
Yeah.
You could find things for yourself. There is so much that city has to offer, but it's not openly advertising it. Like it's most of the times it's not a closed community, but they don't publicly advertise themselves. I assume because it's not commercial, and they find people the same way by friends introducing friends, or like it's some sort of closed community.
Well, I feel like it's kind of like what you were saying about you don't even have a specific way that you found out, maybe Facebook, but it's like one, if you go looking for something, but also the energy you put out is the energy you attract.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
if someone is saying, comes up to you in the coffee shop and you start getting the vibe that this person would be interested in those things, you're probably gonna mention
That's what I do all the time.
Yeah. People are coming into this coffee shop and you're like, hey, want to go to this like random dance thing?
I'm usually the one advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that is like talking to strangers will get you there. It's if you talk to like the same. Sometimes people will just go into work, for example, if that's where. Let's just make an example. Somebody moves to the city for work and they're working at a tech company, and maybe they're constantly talking to their coworkers about their job. Then they're not going to have those conversations. They need to say, offer. Yeah, you need to be like, I need to offer up a piece of yourself of saying like, I like to dance, or I like to rollerblade, or I'm interested in unique opportunities, like whatever it is, to like find those. And I agree, it is the energy of the city. I feel like in New York City is a lot like that, and it's weird because San Francisco is so small, so people think there's not a lot going on, but actually it has a lot of the qualities of a big city in the way that there's a lot of like unique people here that are looking for unique experiences. So whatever you are looking for, you can probably find here if you just put the energy out. I know that you've been to New York, but how does San Francisco compare to where you're from in Ukraine? Are you from a small town? Are you from a city? How did it compare? How does
Funny enough, my city has a higher population than SF.
Okay.
But is less developed. I mean, obviously, they has a fewer infrastructure. My city has more of a European city vibes, where it's or like I spend most of my life in a city, but I will also go to the village to my grandma or to my stepdad's parents' village. Like not even the village, the level below. There's a village, and what's
you have a village, like a town. I don't know.
Town
I
is
feel
the
like
level above. So like I would go to town, and it's not even there's like a village, and there is in a smaller village.
Okay.
So I've been in contact with nature quite often, so I've enjoyed both, and I have points of comparison. My city is pretty primitive and lifeless in a way. There are some events going on, but it's mostly people going out and having some food and drinking. There is not so much of a quality events happening, and it's a big contrast to SF, where people are wealthy and they have time and opportunity and energy and capabilities to explore these parts of themselves that allow them to later on, and that I guess it allows the culture to develop and evolve and have this sort of community in a city that does funky shit.
Okay.
That's very different to my city. I guess it has to do with wealthiness and upbringing, but I'm not sure. But it feels very different in many ways, especially the culture. The mentality is obviously a big thing.
Hmm.
It's completely different from Slavic. They're like very strict, very judgmental, I would say. Um, Not Slavic people, rather the post-Soviet Union space.
Yeah.
But yeah, super different. Although it has the same potential, the population is there, and it, it's probably the size of SF, if not bigger. So
Yeah. When you say like a different, like when you're talking about the culture or the different mentality, you said stricter. What is an example of the culture appearing to be stricter?
mm, yeah, good question. I'm not sure which one of these are just the general cultural inheritance and which ones are the post-Soviet Union traces.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, people are very judgmental, critical, and not so welcoming of new things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been this propaganda going back and forth against Soviet Union, USSR and US. So everything that's American, everything that's not everything, but many things that are liberal or involving some sort of innovation or something new rising in the horizon, like people exploring gender and identity and stuff, or people generally being more open and honest with themselves allows for this. Being open-minded allows you to make changes, to enter and want to leave your comfort zone, to be comfortable with uncomfortableness, to explore new things. And our people would rather prefer to stay in their comfort zone, and everything new is not, most of the new things are not welcome, other than like some luxurities or common commodities that would improve the quality of life, like anything like some anything electricity based, like a new toaster, let's say. This
Mm-hmm.
is also an innovation. It's new, but it's not radically new, and it brings you some comfort. The cultural thing, they don't bring the comfort, so people are not exploring them. And if we were to make a comparison with the US is much further down. So the image of the US, like it's been radicalized because there are several steps ahead, and the further they are, the crazier the change seems,
Mm-hmm.
or the difference seems. If it was a minor change, you could adapt or you could inherit it or you could implement it within your culture, but the further down it becomes like we're still very homophobic back in Ukraine.
Mm.
It's getting better, but it takes time. So if you're still homophobic and we're at this stage, obviously we're not exploring the gender identity yet.
Mm-hmm.
Not until we're crossing those like other less meaningful
Mm-hmm.
borders and exploring um, ourselves more in that direction. It's not the best way to put it. I didn't quite deliver the idea, but what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
if you can only teach someone who's about on the same level as you or who's not too far away from you. If you're too far apart, you're operating the terms and the vocabulary that other person would not understand. But for
Yeah.
you, it's natural because you assume a lot of things; they're natural to you, and you do many things unconsciously. So there has to be you have to be close enough in terms of skill or like cultural gap to be
Yeah.
able to in,
Explain it. Yeah.
explain
I
it.
mean, like, I feel like also it's like a piece of it is just open mindedness. Like, it's even if they're so far away, if they're open to being wrong about something or open to a different way of thinking. But I think what you're saying is people are can be pretty close-minded. So they're very adamant about their beliefs and values in a way that they're not open to having a conversation. And they can happen on both sides too. Like I want to like there's some people who may describe themselves as very open-minded, but they have very close-minded thoughts about very liberal topics or like it can work both sides. But it's more about saying, hey, I have enough value in exploring humanity in general So I'm willing to have this conversation. But if someone's not open to exploring different ideas, radical ideas, humanity, or having that conversation, then like that conversation is hard. It's hard to have, and in some cases, impossible. I like to say no conversation is impossible to have, but I
Some
do
are,
understand.
some are.
Yeah.
By saying it, I also realized that it's the case for California because California has the wealth and opportunities to be open-minded. Other states, and it's not just the US as far ahead. I would rather say it's a Californian bubble or the
Yes.
luxurities of the highly developed modern cities. Because most of the US is some very undeveloped suburban and agriculture that's decades behind. And I don't wanna, I'm not putting them below or above, that's just the conditions they are in. And we are not closing the gap by putting them lower and discussing it this way, but it's also the case for US a lot, like all the. All right, let's not make it political, but
Yeah, I was gonna say you can get very political, but I think that like without getting political, it's more about just in general. If you're talking like I think the way that we got on this topic was I was asking you for like examples of like how your city was more strict than San Francisco, and you were saying that it's like sometimes people are just more that as a whole, your city leans to be a little bit more closed minded than San Francisco. We're also in San Francisco, which is one of the most, if not the most liberal, like
yeah, exactly.
unique city in the world. Like you
Exactly.
could
Yeah,
argue, like,
that's a big
it's
bubble.
pretty. It is definitely, and like there is a sort of a bubble here because of that. But when you're comparing it like back to your city, and what was it like growing up there in that type of environment for you? How would you describe your childhood in Ukraine?
I was a spoiled kid because I was growing up in an upper mid class family, and also my parents were divorced, so father would send us some money, and my mom would make enough to cover up all of my needs. And also, it was a good period, good economical period in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
where we could afford going abroad every year and going for some vacation. It was like probably I cannot recall because I don't, my memory is structured, but probably the prime time of of the Ukrainian economy in the recent decades. So I was growing up in a in a very comfortable, I would call it, environment where I would get everything I want and I would be allowed to do everything I want. I would not get the emotional connection though, because working like that and raising a child requires a lot of energy and effort. So she would not have, my mom would not have the capability to invest into me emotionally or spend some quality time with me. But other than that, every need was fulfilled.
When you
But
say she was working, so she was working a full time job, and then you also have siblings. So
I was the only child for a while,
okay,
and then as my father and mom divorced, my father got other. He now has two families, but he remarried a couple of times, and with each family he has a child.
okay.
And my mom and my stepdad also made a kid at some point. But I was growing up the only child, so everything, all the money, attention, attraction was all focused on me.
Okay. But you said that your mom was busy working, so you lacked the emotional connection with her.
It's a hard topic for me because the more I think about it, the more conflicts appear in my head because I remember it one way, or I think I remember it one way. Then when I try to dive deeper in the situation, I see her perspective, or I see a different, probably more objective perspective on the situation because I was reading cues and like I was not, I didn't have the situational awareness at the time to analyze what was the situation like. I just had an emotional impact caused on me, and that's all the information I would store. And I remember the situation one way, and then the new ways opened up to me as I started diving into the situation. But I would say that she raised me pretty well. We would go out and eat a lot, and she wasn't a love kid. She didn't get that from her mom, so she was trying to give me that, I guess, in a way. But she also didn't know how to, because she wasn't love herself. Like, she didn't get that love, so she didn't know how to provide it. So she was overly care, I guess. How should you put it? She was
Mhm.
giving me too much care and was over caring,
Like
not
maybe
allowing me,
smothering, maybe is a word that sometimes.
not giving me an option to fail and explore things myself. She would allow me to try everything I want, but also the thing where I needed to. Mm, she would do everything for me to the point where I wouldn't have to put effort into doing something myself, like cooking or some simple things that later translated into me not exploring, not trying new things because of the fear of failure.
Hmm.
And there were some good benefit. There, like I was a happy kid up to a certain point, but um, there were some pros and cons. Actually, I'm grateful now that I think of all of it. Like, because I had one perspective, and then later on, as I started um, analyzing the situation, I started realizing that they gave me everything. I had everything I needed,
Hmm.
and I don't have that hunger, you call it, where you
Yeah.
were raised in poverty and then you constantly strive for money, or like you have some unclosed, unsettled needs that you are constantly trying to like fulfill your hunger in
Okay,
a way.
but you don't necessarily describe like what you're describing to me is someone who is not looking for new opportunities or like looking to be challenged, which you do come off as really ambitious. Like you come off as someone, but is that something that's recent you found in like your recent years that you started to become more ambitious as you've moved away from home?
I was always ambitious, but I wasn't given the environment to try and fail
Okay.
because I was heavily judged.
Okay.
So I would rather not, and I was also treated as a smart kid, so I would rather put the least amount of effort possible to achieve something and prove that I'm smart, or not do it at all at the risk of failure and realizing I'm not that smart.
Hmm.
So that environment was not incentivizing me to go and explore in a way. So it was a change that I made moving to the US, where people constantly try stuff. I mean, not in the US, the Bay Area, the California, maybe the Bay Area in particular. There's this entrepreneurship mindset that everyone's constantly trying and exploring. And the big difference that I keep seeing or remembering, whenever you come up with an idea and you tell it to your friend, or in my case, you tell it to your friend back in Ukraine, he goes criticizing you and saying it's a bullshit, which might be the case, but doesn't matter. And then here you come up with the most ridiculous, stupid idea possible, like I want to be a goose farmer, and goes like, yeah, that's the one. Like,
It really is
yeah.
like that, isn't
So
it?
everyone's very supportive, and this sense of freedom allows you to explore yourself more and be efficient with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that back in Ukraine, and it was really nice exploring this parts of myself, moving to the Bay and facing all these people.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that, which I know this is a sensitive topic, so like, we can go at a whatever pace. But um the decision to come to the US, it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily just like hi, I want to move to the Bay Area because I know I'm gonna like it and all these opportunities. There was a lot going on in
Yeah,
Ukraine 3 years ago. Can
and
you
still,
Yeah, still is.
actually
Um
getting worse.
yeah. So, I mean, we could spend hours discussing the last 3 years in the Ukraine, but I want to focus more on your experience. What led to that decision to leave Ukraine in April 2022?
It didn't look perspective to stay in Ukraine because they closed the borders. I was 17 or 17 at the time, and they closed the borders. So whoever it's within that range, 18 to 65, is not living in the country because he might or she, most likely he, might potentially get drafted at some point. Not that they would draft 18 years old and send them to Vietnam, but there is a possibility. I was making a reference with the US.
Yeah.
And there is a possibility. Like, I don't think people in the US thought that they would send high schoolers to fight in Vietnam because it doesn't make any sense. So it doesn't make any sense in Ukraine either, and they don't do it unless people are volunteering. And also from my experience, the way I remember it, there were some people trying to get drafted because they were very patriotic, but because of the lack of experience, they would not be accepted and be rejected because it's pointless. Why wasting people on that? Like, why wasting someone's life? But not being able to live is a big thing, and if the war is gonna, it does at the moment. If the war is gonna go on and get worse, the situation is getting worse and it's gonna get even worse. There's no perspective on staying in Ukraine. That there's less job offers, cities, infrastructure, everything's getting slowly destroyed, and it half functions now. Even it, like probably less than half functions at best. Half functions now. The economy is in like very deep depression, I would call it. The Ukrainian credit score as a country right now is of these countries that have been defaulted. So there is no perspective. So the idea, and it's not safe. So the idea was that while I can live and I can have the freedom to choose to either stay in the US or come back whenever I can, and that's the how the whole rhetoric was. You can go try and explore whether you like it or not. You can stay for a couple months, whether you like it or not. You stay or you're coming back. But when I went there, as I was still adapting and I was realizing what just happened because it wasn't solely my decision. I initially said no, and my father insisted, and I left, which I'm very grateful for. But I didn't realize it at the time, and as I was processing and catching up on things, the realization started coming that I'm not coming back.
And why not? Why couldn't you go back?
No perspective, no point. It's not. It's irrational. Why would you come back and stay there and don't have a job? Because the economy is great here. You can make, the American dream. It's not as alive, but there is some money, and you can make money and send them back to Ukraine and support your family directly instead of coming back and being an anchor and not being able to live or progress in a way. There was no perspective, like essentially, yeah, no perspectives back in Ukraine. So it started becoming more and more obvious. So it was simply irrational to come back. So the decision, I didn't even need to make a decision. I just realized it at some point.
Yeah, how did that feel to come upon that realization?
It wasn't, I feel like it wasn't even as much of a logical decision, but more of intuitive. So the transition from I'm coming back, I wasn't thinking of coming back, I was thinking of going there, going to the US, staying in the US and exploring and see how it feels. So I wasn't thinking of coming back immediately. And I also liked it. It's much better than the Ukraine. I mean, the SF, the Bay Area particularly, it's a very nice balance of infrastructure to nature. It has a very good combinations of several unique things that might be present in other places, but not present, not combined, not being present together. So I also liked it, and I saw the opportunities, and I was, I guess, in some way accumulating certain experiences that would slowly change my opinion on the US and California.
Mhm.
That would make me want to stay and try. And I came up with that naturally. It wasn't a decision as such. I just at some point understood that I'm staying.
Mhm.
So there was no emotions bound. So it wasn't a one night decision. It was an accumulative effect.
Mhm.
So
And so now when you look back on it, is it hard to look back on that, or is it more like you're just grateful? I mean, I can imagine that's kind of a mixed emotion that we realize that you're never going to go back to where your family
it's
lives.
certainly a mix. I'm very optimistic about it because I'm having a good time, but the experiences were mixed. And as long as I'm emotionally detached from past experiences, I can discuss them. But if I were to dive in and see certain reasonings or what my actions were at the time, it was a hard time for sure. But came up, came out as a better person. So I'm grateful for that. But certainly there is a lot to process. There are plenty of mixed and unresolved, unsettled emotions around that topic.
And you're I know we when we talked before, you're dealing with a lot of that now. Like when you came, you talked a little bit about what you did when you first got here of starting a job,
Mhm.
and there was like a little bit of a transition period there. I guess what what was that like? Like jumping into the workforce, what 18, 17, 18 at the time.
Mhm.
What was that like?
So I haven't processed it. That's why I need to think about it a little more. But the transition was rough since my mom didn't let me do things for myself because she would do everything, so I wouldn't feel the need to take care of myself because she would take care of myself. I didn't have this fundamental survival skills. Like, I'm not used to cook for myself, to live with other people, or considering their freedom, their private spaces, which is a skill in a way. I have a good intuition, so and logic, so certain things were obvious to me, but there were also plenty of new unobvious things that I were exploring, and I had to adjust. And it all takes bits of energy from you,
Mm-hmm.
from figuring out your nutrition to occupying yourself to with whatever hobbies or filling up your free time to figuring out strategizing on what's the plan. Like, I was fully given to myself. Usually you go to school and you have time to um, you don't need to make a strategic decision. So going to school sometimes might be a blind choice, but also a good choice in a way that you're leaving the opportunity, the room for you leaving yourself this flexibility to don't take any strategical and important decisions. You have this 4 years or whatever 5 years to process, analyze. You can always quit school as well if you figure out it's not the thing that you need. So you have this room, you have the direction, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
I didn't have one, and I was still adapting to living on my own and being apart from my friends, my ex at the time, my high school sweetheart, my family, like pretty much everything I was used to, as well as having problems with um, language and culture, like being trying to connect to people, and all small bits they drain you. All the small bits, like every new project decreases the efficiency of your existing project. So it was the adaptation took a while because there was a lot to adapt to, pretty much the whole lifestyle, everything from the way I sing, the how I behave to like essentially everything, the whole lifestyle. So there was a lot of mixed emotions because my 17, 18 at the time years old brain was still growing. I'm still building up my personality, so I don't have the mechanisms to deal with that amount of stress. So not all of the emotions I was able, and I'm still not able to explain, or I don't even remember some of them. But it was very chaotic. It was very unobvious what to do. I mean, it was obvious in a way that, yeah, you wait till you turn 18, you get your employment, and you go work and you learn the language. But there was a lot to it behind the scene. Um, and I didn't want to. I was lazy. I was still used to the framework where everything's been done and I need to pay the bills. I did work. I wasn't a slacker. I had a job. I made my pocket money. I had money to spend, but I did not live on my own, so I did not plan my budget, or like there was all these small bits that were draining energy from me and I was not aware of when I was starting living on my own. So it all kind of came out at once and I was figuring the things out myself, because also many times often I was embarrassed to ask for help or admit that I don't know something, because it's a big part of my personality to be that smart person or to know things. So it's really hard to admit that, to admit that you have your limits, you've reached the floor, or you're not as good as you thought, or like all these things. And I didn't have mechanisms to deal with it at the time. So a lot of that I was just simply accumulating. Then it was going out. It was naturally going out through me being overly stressful or aggressive or lazy or just simply demotivated. So I was catching up in all of that in the last couple of years as I was building on the side, building up my whole new lifestyle. So a lot of mixed emotions. That's, I like the way you put it. There's
Yeah.
a lot of mixed emotions.
Well, it's like it's so interesting because some of that a lot of people can relate to. Everyone goes through that time period where you transition from being a child to adulthood. Some do it very early on in their lives. They have to be the adult in their household when they're way too young. And some people it never happens. You know, they don't grow up until they're in their late 50s or 60s or something. It always happens at a different time. But yours is just, as you pointed out, you had to do not only that, you not only had to make the transition from childhood to adulthood, but in a different country with on very short notice, without your support system there, and you had language barriers, cultural barriers, like all these things going in place. It's just like it
There
was
were a lot of
so, and I,
variables.
yeah, there's a lot of different, and you just said like all these different projects, as you called them, to that you couldn't focus on executing one because you had to do them all at once. Whereas, for example, I had the opportunity to go from my home to a boarding school, and my home was nearby. So my support system was still there. And then I went to college, and again, my support system was still nearby. Then I moved into a city. Again, support system was still close by. And then I moved across the country in a of the same country I've lived in my entire life. Like it's just other people have. I'm sure there's people who have similar stories to you, but it's just more common in the U.S. that they don't, and that they're more like the fact that you had to go through all that all at once. It just got to be chaotic emotionally, like to
A lot to
balance all
figure
of
out.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot to figure it
it's
out.
all new. It's all unknown.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like everyone faces these stages, but most of the times not all at once.
exactly.
So that's, it's not hard. It's obviously hard, but it's not. It's pretty straightforward how to solve each single one of them, but not when only. It's easy to judge it post factum, but not when they're all faced
It's like you're multitasking
at once.
all times.
Yeah, yeah.
Quickly going back to that experience of like of the transition period exactly. When your family didn't come over with you, but your aunt did. So why was it your aunt and not your entire family that came over with you.
Yeah, as I said earlier, my father and mom divorced,
Mm-hmm.
got divorced, so each one of them has a family behind,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really expensive. It's not possible for everyone to transition. I was only able to come because my cousin, my aunt's son, was ready to take us in
Okay.
and help us acclimatize and help us get used to the US. He essentially sheltered us, and he was also very proactive and very clever with the thing that we were doing. Like we straight away went to get our social securities, ID cards, driver licenses, insurances, etc. Because has already done it himself, like at some point, like 10 years ago, or whenever he has moved to the US. So he faced the same issue, but there was no cousin for him, or he did it fully himself. In my case, I had my aunt and I had a cousin, which helped me a lot, but I wasn't using it properly because I was embarrassed to ask for help.
Mm.
And he did it himself, so I assume he has that experience and he knew what exactly we needed to do. And turns out, yes, he did, because we did all the right things very early on. So that reason I came with my aunt, because she wanted to see her son, and also my dad asked her to bring me to the US, because it's not a good idea to send a 17-year-old teenager by himself, travel across Europe and then across the continent, across the ocean. So he volunteered to live her lifestyle, everything she had. It was at me and my aunt and not
Yeah.
my parents, because they got divorced and each one of them had a family that they could not leave behind. And it's also very expensive, so they didn't have the financial capability, and also they had parents that they couldn't leave, that are elderly people.
Mm-hmm.
They are still doing and functioning on their own, but in case something happens, they would have no one to help them essentially.
Yeah.
So there were some restrictions that would not allow them to leave other than financial, which I also didn't have. Or they could have sell an apartment and make things work out for me, but my cousin, my aunt's son, has agreed and volunteered to help us. He bought us a tickets, and he planned the whole trip, because it wasn't an easy trip. It wasn't a direct flight. We had an 11-day trip across the Europe, Spain, Mexico, San Diego, and then California, and then San Francisco. So he planned the whole trip and helped us out, and he volunteered to do many of the paperwork and just help us acclimatize and direct us in a proper direction, because uh, he would also do it himself. But back then, when he got a job offer, he moved on himself and had this transition period, and he like that he handled fully by himself. And I had an opportunity. That's another reason I also agreed, because I had someone not necessarily waiting for me, but I had a pillow I could fall on, I could sleep on. Like I had the cousin who could have helped me in case something goes off.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why me and my aunt and not my family, because my aunt wanted to see her son and she didn't have the. I think her visa got rejected, or for some reason they could not. She could not visit the US,
Yeah.
her son. And also, my dad asked her to bring me to actually help our family out and bring me to the US, because it's not a good idea to send a teenager across the continents by himself, like who's not even 18 years old at the time. It was the issue. Maybe they would have done that, but I would probably have been taken to child protection services at the border with the US for safety purposes, and it would have been redirected to some family, and there was a concern. There were concerns around it. Um, so this, and also huge shout out to my aunt for living, also doing the same exact thing that I did, but at her age, it is much, much harder because she is less prone to be stressed at her age, and her adaptation, like she's essentially aging, so her neuroplasticity naturally becomes worse. So she struggles with learning new stuff more, and she's just overall less adaptive with age. And she was about to hit her retirement at the place where she worked for over 20 years. So she was gonna have some really nice acknowledgement and achievements over there, like that would later on boost her. So she also left that behind.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing, it's a mind blowing sacrifice.
Amazing that she did
Yeah,
that sacrifice for you
yeah,
to come over. I mean, she got to see her son, but that's a huge sacrifice to bring
yeah,
over.
exactly.
So your aunt sacrificed a lot in order to come here. And something you were talking about that stood out to me is not only you mentioned that you grew up in a comfortable lifestyle, and you mentioned that not necessarily wasn't financially feasible for your family to come over, but also it's just complicated. And then you walk through the journey that you had to take in order to get here, your aunt's sacrifice. And I think it's just important for people who hear this story to recognize so many times people are saying, oh, if someone's in a country facing conflict, or if they're like, why don't they just leave? And it's just not that simple. You had to make sacrifices, your aunt had to make sacrifices, and your family like still couldn't all come over. Or maybe and maybe it's also they just don't want to. They have families that they want to take care of there, they have elderly. It's just it's so complicated.
Which is another sacrifice of itself of letting your relative go and staying, and
right.
there is so much to it.
There's so
There's
much.
so many unobvious things.
Yeah. And so I just like that's so impressive, and like I can't imagine how emotionally complicated that feels. Are you still in touch with your family back in Ukraine?
Every so often, I never talked much to my dad,
Okay.
and we're not close with my mom, but we're in touch. He does celebrate me with my birthday, and I celebrate him with his and his daughter's, my sister's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
But probably nothing other than that. And my mom, I've been working on it a lot, and I've gotten much, much better at giving her some compassion and empathy. Like I am putting a tremendous effort to make it happen, and I see the progress. So there is a nice switch in tendencies going in that way. Um, but we are still not close, but we stay in touch.
Stay in touch.
Every other day.
How does it feel to be like? How do you feel about everything that's happening in Ukraine now and being here?
Genuinely, I am emotionally detached and withdrew. I've withdrawn myself from that because I don't have energy to worry about that. In a way, I do help my family and Ukrainians in the ways I can, but there is only so little that I can do that does make a difference. Everything other than that is I am simply wasting my mental energy and does not make an impact or a difference. That I chose not to worry about it and not to invest my time. I'm only aware of the things like in a geopolitical environment. I'm only aware of the things that are affecting my family directly now. So I'm mostly fully detached mentally, and like I'm not following the news as much.
But you're
But it's that. Sorry, I didn't answer your question. I answered that I'm detached, implying that I don't have any exact feeling. But obviously, it's terrible, and I feel really bad not only for Ukrainians but also for Russians and all other people, everyone who is dying for essentially nothing, wasting their lives.
mm-hmm.
It's terrible. It's pretty. I couldn't find the word, but it's not nice to say wasting because some people have beliefs that they have reasons they do that, so it's not nice to say wasting, but that's how I say it because there's a lot to it. That's just my vision.
It's complicated. It's war in general is awful. Like it's
Yeah,
just
that's
awful.
yeah.
Like
People
it's
die, not okay.
not okay.
As simple as it is.
Yeah.
People die, not okay.
Exactly. And I think that your connection to it obviously makes it more complicated and more emotional and sensitive. So I appreciate you sharing that because I do think that, especially in the US, I remember when the wars first kicked off, there was a lot of momentum behind supporting Ukraine and a lot of initiatives around it, and it's just drawn on, and naturally other things happen, and people kind of put it on the back burner. But it's also like for Ukraine, it's still very much going on, and it's still like
Yeah, it's
very much.
getting worse.
And in Russia, it's happening, and and I love how you said that too. It's just it's tragic that on both sides that like lives are being lost to this, and there's no way around that. So I appreciate that, and appreciate what you go through and deal with it.
Strategy is going on both sides. It's easy to call someone a terrorist, but given the environment they are in, they might not have a choice other than follow, because people are pretty much getting shot because they deserter. They
deserted.
desert. Is that the word?
Desert, like if they
desert,
leave,
if they just like they're just being shot and killed, and like they're forced. And then they're also brainwashed. The propaganda has been going for decades in Russia, and it's given the environment they're in, it's really hard to have a different outcome for or like make a different decision for them, and it's terrible that someone's doing it purposely, and lives are being wasted for this.
I want to talk a little bit about now that you're here and you had two jobs and you're spending a lot of time now processing everything that's happened over the last 3 years. Last time we talked, you were talking about how you worked two jobs, you got burned out, now you're processing.
Yeah, coming back to how I came up with an idea of going to Burning Man, I got scared and then I came up with a couple reasonable excuses to don't feel bad about it, to make it reasonable, justified decision and not the decision of a fear. But I knew that it was a fear, and I did not like the idea of doing something out of fear at all, for many reasons. And then I spent some time processing it, maybe 5-10 minutes processing it, and I called my aunt and shared the concerns, and I decided to, I said, fuck it, I'm going regardless. I hate doing anything out of fear. I don't ever want to play or do anything from a position of fear, so I figured I am gonna go regardless. I'm gonna call my cousin back. It was also part of the problem to call back and admit it, that I said no and it was not reasonable and actually want to go, because that's a vulnerability that I didn't want to show to my cousin. So it was another restraint. Like, why would not I call back and go after all? But I said, fuck it, I'm going regardless. And I ended up going, and I was not sure how was it gonna turn out, and I came super unprepared. Although I followed several survival lists, and you can never be prepared for anything like that. It's not only the camping, but also camping in extreme conditions, super unique, super unusual. You cannot be prepared for everything, especially with me not having so much experience in camping. I did some trekking and backpacking and going down the river, but not an actual camping, and for the week, for a duration of like 10 days, 11 days that I spent over there. So I was super unprepared, and I was still closed within myself. I wasn't too open to people, and that's, I think that what the Burning Man does, it highlights whatever is going on within yourself. Like if you are lonely, nothing's gonna change solely because you're at the party. You're gonna be at the same party, but since everyone's having fun, your loneliness is more visible to you now. If you don't have friends or you went by yourself and you felt lonely and you wanna fill it up with some fun, but the issue is still there. But now in the contrast, it's more highlighted. And at the Burning Man, in that environment where you're mostly detached, it, for the context, it's a desert, a dead, lifeless desert. It's not a desert like a Nevada or Arizona with Joshua trees in it and Grand. It's a full dead, lifeless desert. So it's empty. So there is no attractions. There is nothing to do. Everything that's there is people bring it with them. And finishing up my point about highlighting things, it's a unique environment where you're completely detached because it's nothing like you've been into. And the very nice differential part of it is that you have to live there. You don't just go there and visit. You need to actually adapt and live in that environment, which sets you up for some unique states of mind, like when you're traveling or when you're detached and not processing something, where you're not stressed, you're more prone to have good experiences or some nice insights or just overall have a better time. And you're less stressed outside of city, outside of all these concerns, and they're not present at the Burning Man. So it's a unique environment. It's a great space for experiments, but it's also highlights whatever is going on in your life. In my case, it was loneliness and not an unopenness to people. So that's what I felt the most because everyone is so open and communicative and everyone's having a great time, but I don't because I'm not in that state of mind where I would allow myself to, or like where I would feel that I not deserve it, but just feel like doing it, feel confident doing it. And the on a contrast again, especially over there, because everyone's more open-minded, more open to things over there at the festival. The contrast highlights the downsides a lot by like a huge volume. You could say things clearly. Um, and I had an acclimatization period, and I tried, or like, people also saw me being sad and lonely, so people approached me, and after several interactions, or after I acclimatized, after the acclimatization period, I've also started catching up on this period, and also started. At some point, I ended up at a point where I felt myself really free, open, welcoming, wanted to chat, to communicate, socialize, and I have never felt that in my life to that extent, that I enjoyed the state I was in so much that I wanted to bring it back and implement it into my day-to-day life. So that was a transformative part of it because you can know what to do, but you might not always find the motivation or the strength to do what you have to do. And in that case, I knew that it's great to be open. It's great to communicate. Communication is a need. Needs to be fulfilled, obviously, but you don't just get to like take and solve it easily. So I happened to have that environment, that situation where it was all resolved for me, or I fulfilled the need, and I felt so easy, so fulfilled, so relaxed because I didn't have all this extra things like career, life, like cultural barriers that I was facing in the city and just in that very fast-paced, crazy environment. I got all of them in a desert at the festival that I felt so free and satisfied and fulfilled that I wanted to. I felt how nice it is that it gave me the motivation to work towards it.
So, I mean, there's so much in what you said, like about like the feeling of what Burning Man gave you. And one thing that you said is you took pieces of that to bring back, and like a lot of the openness that it taught you about like just like being open to communicate. When you went back this year, did what? How did it change year over year about your approach and how quickly you acclimated?
First of all, I was introduced to it. I was already introduced to it, so I knew what to expect. It still took me time to get into that state, back into the state and relax and let everything that I had in the city go off.
Mhm.
But I knew what to expect. I knew what I was going for, so the transition was smoother and I enjoyed it much more because I didn't need to force myself to do anything, and I've overall gotten much better at listening to myself and feeling my feelings better in a way, like recognizing them more over the past years. So I was just listening to whatever my body, my brain, wherever I feel, not what my brain says me, wherever I feel or whatever I would want to do, I just do it. And I knew that it was the key, like you don't plan things, you just enjoy it. And I was enjoying it to an extent where I would not have to put effort in it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it changed. So it's very enjoyable to see the progress and kind of pinpoint it for myself, make these points of references and comparisons to the last year and how it unfolded.
Yeah.
Also,
Sorry, go ahead.
also another thing that I wanted to add to it, the reason everyone's more uh, prone to let go of things in a city pace, and it's easier to do it over there. You could try and do something like that in a different environment. You could try to do it in a city, but you're still within the society, within the rules of society, within the system that forces you to follow its rules in a way, and that festival doesn't have it. It's non-commercial, non-transactional. The key idea of the festival is that it brings people, and the environment is fully non-transactional. Any sort of transactions are essentially forbidden or like super unwelcomed. Um, there is no money in the festival. There is no barter, no exchanges. It's solely gift based.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel like doing something or gifting someone something, you do it. I've exchanged hats with someone, or someone gifted me one of his religious necklaces that is valuable to him. So it's all gift based, and you get the energy and you share the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So you could try to do something like that in a city or outside of Burning Man, and it might be similar, but it's not gonna be the same as the reference I was making earlier. You could try go into that environment, but it would feel more like visiting. You would walk in, you would take a look, maybe try it, but it does not absorb you don't live in it.
Yeah.
But Burning Man it's super remote. It's a lifeless desert, so it forces you to live there and acclimatize and follow the rules in a way.
But it sounds like it also forces you to create. Like
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, like you like because it's a desert, because it's a wow, because it is a desert, you have to create anything. So you're talking about specifically transactions, but it's also we talked about like costumes, or you were talking about how in our other conversation you're talking about how somebody like can go out and create a piece of art in the middle of the night or in the middle of the morning. Yeah, self-expression, whatever that is. And I was talking about the example. There's an example that I had of being in college and I wore funky leggings and a t-shirt with a little pug on it, and it was just because I was tired of wearing a black shirt and jeans to all my college parties, and I had the most fun I ever had because costumes, self-expression disarm people and create conversation sometimes, and that's not necessarily something that we're going to do on a day-to-day basis. Hence why I'm wearing a black shirt and blue jeans right now. Like I'm acclimating, and it's what I want to wear right now. But I think what you're saying is it forces you to create something that's really true to yourself because no one else is saying, hey, this is the social norm. If anything, they're saying we have eliminated social norms, so you need to come with what you're most comfortable wearing, what you're most comfortable giving to other people, with what you're most comfortable creating, and that in itself is just like a special place that can only really exist at Burning Man in that environment.
Essentially, people are very self-expressive and honest over there, and it's not that it forces you to do anything. It doesn't. It does the exact opposite. It doesn't force you to anything, and you see people not using it, but people actually doing it and not forcing themselves to do anything and just doing whatever they like and expressing themselves and doing this funny, sometimes fucked up shit.
Yeah.
And you see it's going all over the place. So the state of being open, expressive, and doing whatever you want normalizes in your head, and it also makes you want to do that. Mm-hmm. And it allows you to have a very unique new perspectives, and you do new things that you would never otherwise considered. Mm-hmm. And you get an absolutely unique new perspectives on life, on yourself, and it just gives you so much joy that it's simply enjoyable to do that. It doesn't have to be beneficial. It is beneficial. There is a lot of retrospection and so much reflection around that. You would, I guarantee you would get plenty of valuable insights from it as well. But that's the whole idea, that doesn't forces you to anything, but it rather you watching other people enjoying themselves like that makes you want to join them.
Well, one of the reasons that I started this podcast was like connecting with strangers. Connecting with strangers is a big reason to give stories behind strangers and who they are, and meaningful interactions with those strangers. Was there one meaningful interaction with a stranger at Burning Man that stood out to you?
I guess, yeah, the school first stranger, one of my campmates. I was still, it was the first couple of days, and I was still at him. He just gave me a hug. It was such a warm hug that it made me feel like whenever there is something that you do when you enter the hotel, when you're vehicle or when you're driving, not when you're taking bus. For most people, they say to you, welcome home when you enter the building. And I knew that I'm gonna enjoy the festival, but I had some unsettlement after I arrived because of the weather conditions and some inner personal trauma going on. And I was still acclimatizing, and one of my campmates, I didn't know her at the time, just gave me a hug. It was such a warm, such a perfectly timed hug that it cheered me up. And I felt like home again. It was one of the strange. There were plenty of those really meaningful. Not all of them might be life-changing, but every single interaction is meaningful or some nice conversation. One of the guys really met has shared that it's his first year. He shared his concerns and his story, how they survived the weather, of his partner had to come back for a couple of days to study, to pass an exam in school, and then he came back to the festival, and it's like such a really things to do, because we spent 15 hours always, 5 hours driving, and 10 hours in the line. And in person, his first time in really came to drove for 5 whatever amount of hours, stayed in the line, drove back, did the same thing, passed an exam at school, came back, still had fun. I didn't see the guy afterward, but I'm pretty confident that the partners is coming back, and each single one is like this really nice counter story being shared on both sides. That me something to the person doing something to me. And every single one of them I've had been very genuine. It's also like to say this a lot. It's a big playground in a way that you consider the consequences of many things you were saying while you're in the city for many reasons. Prestige status, your prestige status being affected is simply the context is slightly different, more official. It has to be like there's some restraints and learning and something like that. And since it's 7 years out at most, I feel like most of the time it's already 50. Doesn't matter. At this scale, every single person you meet, most likely you're not gonna see the person again. So I'm not saying that it doesn't make it all meaningless, it makes it super meaningful, but you're also free to try things or you have something that you want to share and you could not share to anyone, you can do it because most likely you're not going to see the person. And I've gotten lots of support from strangers that's sharing my concerns or the vice versa. I was supporting random people when I saw that people out there not having a good time. And you would think it would make the fact that you're not going to see the person again would make it meaningless and everyone would just be avoidant, but it was actually quite the opposite. So it's a really unique environment and when you see people doing that, you know, like when you walk down the street and you pick up the trash and send it to them, like everyone, not everyone, but the majority of people are doing that, are like that in the act way, because you have to clean up everything after yourself, after the festival. The desert needs to remain in the exact same state as it was without, before the festival, without the human. And in a more metaphorical way where you simply don't, people are not avoidant, people see it as an wrong, they see the need to do something, someone needs help, they go and provide. So for me, I am like that, but I would not also fully utilize it in the city, you could hold it this way. And it was very nice to actually be able to do that and see how nice it feels. And I brought it back and I was trying to implement it more, actually do it more often in my day-to-day life, which also fulfills in many ways. So it's a must. You cannot overexplain.
There's a lot of meaningful interactions that make up, like, it's like hard to pick one because it's like all these meaningful interactions. Small meaningful interactions lead up into like what
Because they're meaningful to me, but usually when people say meaningful, they expect something valuable and some nice insight that they don't necessarily can translate or they don't necessarily can deliver the meaningfulness of the situation to me. I don't necessarily can deliver it to the person and try to work. So all of them are.
Well, I think that's it. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important to your story?
I want to make another innovation in the really and being not ideal place, and you should not idealize it. It's amazing, but it's not ideal. But it's a lifetime experience. Everyone must try it once. It might not be for everyone, but everyone's gonna try it once to explore themselves, to see what it's for whatever reason, just try it. It's worth it. It's amazing.
From Ukraine to Bonnie Man, you are this has been quite the journey. I feel like this is, when I think about this like last 2.5 hours that we've been sitting here, I mean, the amount of coverage that we've covered, and then I think if anyone is watching this and is thinking, I don't know if Bonnie Man is for me, and then they hear your entire story, and at the end of this, it's like, I think if Burma could go from Ukraine, come here, go to Bonnie Man, I mean, I just can't imagine the journey. I think that everybody should try it.
Yeah, I went from spending 16 hours in DC and not dancing or being creative at all to days where I'm enjoying it a lot, and it was natural now. So, yeah.
Everyone should.
Yeah, it's for everyone.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you're afraid that you'll not find the thing to do, you will. There's some types of people over here.
Yeah. That's it.